everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Improvisation Basics for Beginners. We're excited to have you all here today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to today's presenter as well. So, to get things started, I'd like to introduce to you today our presenter, Michael Kamuf. Mike is an exclusive writer for the Bellwind division of Alfred Music. He publishes in our jazz, orchestra, and concert band catalogs. He has over 100 publications in print, many of which have become standard literature for the young jazz ensemble. I'm excited to introduce him to you today. So Mike, I'm going to let you take it away. The floor is yours.
So this presentation is going to be kind of geared towards instrumental music teachers, but if we do have some general music teachers in this session, please let me know, and I can kind of do some side things regarding that as well. Our clinic outline, this is also in the resource doc that Felicia shared. So if you'd like to grab the clinic outline from either location, feel free to do so. Let's talk about some of the things that we can do to inspire our students to take a hold of improvisation and make it their own. One of the things that we can do is we can make it a creative and fun and meaningful experience by doing these things, and these are the things that I'm going to focus on in the clinic. Selecting effective literature that supports beginning improvisation. So in other words, the charts, we want to make sure that we are picking material that is going to set students up for success. We also want to make sure that we are giving the students enough performance opportunities to get out there and not only just hone their skills, but having a chance to really show what they're learning and have those experiences of soloing and performing multiple times. Modeling scales and digital patterns is crucial for students in learning how to improvise, and we're going to discuss some ways of teaching that today. Another thing that's really, really important is developing ear training, understanding chords a little bit to an extent at the very beginning. You don't have to get too crazy with the theory at first, but we want to make sure that we have a basic understanding of the chords a little bit, and teaching with call and response. And I'm actually going to show you some demonstration video of me doing that. And call and response pays a lot of dividends, not just for teaching improvisation. It pays dividends rather for learning articulations, and learning swing style, especially. And as teachers, we have to be comfortable enough to be able to do that with our students. And if you are not that comfortable doing that with your students, I highly suggest getting yourself into a college band for extra credit, or a community band that has a jazz component, and get your feet wet in it so that you can effectively demonstrate what we're going to talk about today to your students. So we want to make sure that we develop our students' ears, not just with chords, but with call and response training as well. And this is really hard to do, but incorporating listening into each rehearsal, that's hard to do sometimes, especially if you're in a situation where it's not a curricular class and you're just kind of pulling everybody together. But it does pay huge dividends as well. So we want to make sure that we are playing music for our students, and I'm going to give you some resources for that as well if you are not comfortable enough with that information. So let's talk about let's do some like basic stuff about our jazz ensemble, and about beginning jazz ensemble, and what are some things that are effective in literature choices. Well, you have to keep the strengths of your ensemble in mind when you're picking charts. You want to make sure that you're picking engaging and fun to play material as well. If it can make connections to jazz history, that's even better. If you're doing a medium tempo blues and it sounds like a Count Basie tune, well, guess what? You can introduce Count Basie to your students. Or if you're doing an arrangement of a Duke Ellington tune, you can introduce Duke to your students, or whatever that material is. Make connections with the students. All this stuff is on their phones. They have it. You can't. My phone go away. It's not there. It's all on their phones. It's all on the kids' phones. We just have to direct them there to get them there to listen. And begin with the end in mind when you're picking material out too. Scaffold your charts, build confidence by starting with very, very easy literature selections that use what is called block scoring. That means if you look at arrangements, block scoring is when everybody is moving together, doing the same thing. Vertically down the score, everybody's doing the same thing. Or in a section, everybody's doing the same thing in a section. And then also call and response. Again, there's that call and response thing. And we want to make sure that we pick charts that utilize those two different concepts. We also want to make sure that we are not afraid to change direction. If a chart is not working for your group, it's not working at that particular moment in time. So come back at it, have something else in your back pocket ready to go. What are some characteristics of quality charts that we can use that have that are going to have improvisation sections to them? Well, the charts are going to be easy to read. You want to make sure that the articulations are clear and consistent. This is not a problem with most major publishers. It is a problem sometimes with smaller publishers. And then if you know some people that are writing their own material, they may not have an editor and a second set of eyes looking at everything, or a third set of eyes looking at everything. So just make sure that everything's kind of clear and consistent. As it, if you're going to ask a question about it when you're looking at it, your students are definitely going to ask a question about it, or they're just not going to do anything. They're just going to kind of plow through it, right? So make sure that it's clear to the students what's going on. Repetitious elements are very, very key into building confidence with students at this in a beginning jazz ensemble setting. So the repetitious elements include repetitious melodies and rhythm section parts. Okay, so the rhythm section parts should not reinvent the wheel every chorus of the tune. They should be at this age level pretty consistent to build confidence. There should be room for solos or guide solos, and I highly encourage you to tell your students not to use the guide solos at all. Now, there are some exceptions to this that I used when I was teaching, and I did not say don't use the guide solos. I said what I said was I really don't want to hear you play. So I didn't say don't play it that way. I said I really don't want to hear that solo. I want to hear your solo. So encourage that. Sometimes if you pick something where the chord changes are a little dicey and a little too much, then guide solos are okay. But we're trying to make sure that we encourage improvisation. So make sure that you have you pick stuff that has those guide solos, but they're going to be easy to manipulate as well. Rhythm section parts should be carefully notated, meaning that the guitar parts have limited technical demands. Piano voicings are age level appropriate. And what I mean by that is like 2 or 3 notes in one hand and 2 or 3 notes in another hand. When you start getting like too many notes happening, it's not necessary at this age level. We're talking basic beginning jazz ensembles, not necessarily needed. Bass lines are repetitious and attainable, okay? And drum parts are easy to decode or explain. We all know, well, hopefully we all know, stems up on a drum part is your hands, stems down notation is the feet. So make sure that you understand that. Okay. Improvisation sections in these arrangements should have limited harmonic palettes. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there should be an easy chord sequence, blues would be like, the most with 3 to 4 chords in it, depending on what's going on. But if you can find something that can be played, one scale or 2 scales can be used for the entire improvisation section, that's really what's going to get students interested in improvising. If they have to learn a whole bunch of chords at first, that's not necessarily going to be and scales all at once. That's not necessarily going to be the most smooth operation to introduce improv with your students. The forms for the solos should be short, anywhere from 4 to 12 measures. If you have a lot of students interested in soloing, you may have to take something that's down and trim it down. You may have to take something that's like 8 measures and break it up into 4-bar increments or so on. Or if it's a 16-bar section, break it up into 8-bar increments. The chart should have, the chart or charts should have the ability to open up or easily open up a passage for additional soloists. There should be a way for you to figure that out. It should be kind of easy to figure out. Again, the guide solos, but encourage your students not to do that. And this is a key component too. Make sure that the rhythm section parts are going to be attainable in a section that you're going to open up for solo. So what do I mean by that? Well, make sure they're not too busy. And then if you've got a guitar and a piano player, you're going to want to make sure that you have a little bit of what we call deference going on. You don't necessarily have to have them comping at the same time together. You can have a guitar player comp for this soloist and the piano player comp for that soloist, and maybe they can comp. What I mean by comping is playing the chords and accompanying behind them. They can do this trading on and off for the soloists so that they don't get fatigued and the audience also doesn't get the same information over and over and over again from the same instruments. So that's something to think about as well when you're doing that. So now let's kind of get into the nitty gritty of why you're all here with improv. So some of the effective tools that I've found, let me kind of backtrack a little bit. I spent 31 years in the classroom, 27 in the middle school classroom, and I had a pretty successful jazz program. And I found that putting myself out there and demonstrating a lot was really the key to having a great sounding group. I also had the ability to play most of the rhythm section instruments as well, so that was also a part of it too. So the more you learn as a teacher, the more beneficial it's going to be. If you should be able to play, if you're a teacher, you should be able to play a basic swing pattern on the drum set. Okay, you should be able to go to the piano and play some basic chords on the piano to show your students. And sometimes you have to do a little bit of editing as well. So knowing what's doable and what it feels good to you is also going to feel good to students on the piano. I was an okay bassist. I would often just play the roots to show students, okay, here's the root. If there's a simple pattern, I could do it. And I was no good at guitar. So still I'm not. So I always have to find that colleague or friend or a student that's advanced and kind of count on them to help out. But just know that demonstrating as much as you can to your students is going to really, really help. So call and response, how does that work? Well, you're making the call, the band is responding to you. So how I did this, and I'm going to show this to you in just a moment. It's a 2-bar rhythmic cycle is how I used it. You can do it longer than that, but I think for young students, 8 counts of music, 2 measures, 8 counts is more than enough to get them listening and playing a short little phrase and spitting it back at you. Have them play it. You play a phrase and then they play it back to you. That's kind of how this works. You keep playing the same pattern until the rhythmic and articulation accuracy is what you want. I'm going to show you all this here in just a second. Change the rhythmic pattern to now include a second pitch. You start with one pitch and you move on. I have a scripted resource to give you here in just a couple of minutes if you're wondering what's going on. So then you're going to change the rhythm after you get everybody kind of on board with 2 pitches. Then you can add additional pitches. Gently demand accuracy. Don't go on until you've got everybody on board with you when you're doing this. You have to kind of do this in a vamp setting or in a setting where you may drop the harmonic content out. I am going to show you in just a moment how this works using my warm-ups, which are a free resource on my website, which happens to just be my next bullet. How about that? It's like as if I planned that. So if this is on the resource doc that was shared with you earlier, this is also you can also grab it from this QR code. My warm-ups that I guess they've been in print now and as a download on my website now for about 8 or 9 years. These are all things that I did as a teacher on the fly, and I finally got them down on paper. The warm-ups use there's a section called chord studies. It's like a chorale, but there's no real melodies, and there are 4 and 5 note harmonic exercises where everybody's just kind of playing half notes and whole notes, and the chords are voiced out with 4 and 5 note chord voicings, which is a lot different than the concert band world where, we're basically playing most of the time 3 notes at a time. Maybe on a dominant chord, we're playing 4 notes. But in jazz, we start with 4 notes usually and then add 5 or so. Add additional up to 5 or 6 or whatever. So the chord studies that happen in here are to get students' ears kind of going. There's also chromatic scales so that you don't have to go back and reference a method book. And then there's a whole scripted section on the call and response. Okay. And what I did in this document was I made 6 printed rhythm section vamps that look like what I'm about to show you here in just a minute. There's two in B flat, a swing and like a bossa nova, 2 in E flat, swing and bossa nova, and 2 in F, swing and bossa nova. The key and the style of the performance tune that you're doing is going to kind of base off. You're going to base that which exercise that you select to teach this. So, in other words, if your group is playing a B flat blues or a B flat tune in B flat, you're going to use the swing vamp in B flat. Okay. What you would do is you would instruct vibraphone and wind students or non-rhythm section instruments that they're going to be listening for you, and you're going to explain to them what pitches you're going to be playing, and they need to spit back the rhythm and the articulation that you are doing. The rhythm section vamp that it's printed for the students looks exactly like this. It's 2 chords, simple voicings in the piano, 3-note voicings with a 3rd and a 7th and a color note. And that's it. Guitar, 2 chords, drummer just keeping time. And the bass line is very repetitive, okay? Because it's just 2 bars, but it's a non-threatening bass part, as I like to call it. It's very user-friendly for a middle school student or somebody that's just getting started. So one way of teaching this, and I'm going to show you a second way of teaching this as well, is one way of doing this is having the rhythm section play this vamp. And then you let them settle in, and then you make the call, which I have a scripted call that I'm going to show you, and you have them spit the exercises back to you. And you wait until they play it back. You play it, they play it. You play it, they play it. But don't go on until you've got what you want from your students. You kind of have to do very quick assessment of what's going on and making sure that they're with you. You count off the desired vamp that you're using, and then you let the rhythm section settle into a groove. And on your instrument, you play the call, and they respond. Do not move on until you feel everybody is with you. Once your initial call pattern is mastered by the students, then you can move on to another call pattern. Over the time, the number of pitches that you can use for this call can be increased as you go along. I have some samples that use 2 pitches for you. So this is what I have for the swing pattern in B flat. There's 6 scripted. I think I did 6 for each area. So there's 6 B flat swing, 6 B flat bossa, and so on. Okay. I use 2 pitches. I use B flat and D flat. You're going to hear that this gets a little muddy after a while with the students playing it, but you're going to notice that that I do not go on until I've got everybody with me. I use some visual cues when students are not listening to me, but it worked out pretty good. So here's an example of teaching this call and response to our students. This is also again a pivoting thing to get students improvising as well. But it also pays dividends, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, for teaching articulation and style to your students as well. So let's check this out. Okay, so you get the idea. So everybody kind of went along. They had a lot of they had some problems with when I anticipated over the bar line. When I put a note on the and of four and it tied over. You'll also notice that it kind of sounded like, as one of my mentors used to say, it kind of sounded like a typewriter, right? Because I was really actually 6 beats of playing and 2 beats of rest on the end of each thing. I did that on purpose because I wanted the students to have a little bit of processing time, and I also wanted the students to have the ability to form their embouchures. So that's really effective. Now, the rhythm section played the role of the real rhythm section, right? They just kept chugging along. That doing those exercises like that builds incredible confidence because they just have to bam along and get into it and really groove. Now, you may want to have your rhythm section think melodically. So there's another way of doing that as well, including with your drummer. You have to make sure that your drummer is able to do this. They have to be able to keep the hi-hat going if it's a swing on 2 and 4 like this, and they're going to play real lightly on lightly on the crash, I guess, and snare. They're going to play the figure with the band. Some drummers, really young drummers, that's a little bit of a challenge. I happen to be deep in talent this year with with this group that's in the video, so I was able to do that. So, but here's an example of teaching that call and response vamp, but having the rhythm section think melodically. So the drummer just keeps time when you're playing the call, and everybody in the ensemble answers back, including the drums. 2, 1, 2, done. Two things that always crack me up about that video is that, one, I have 2 baritone saxophones. I have no idea what I was thinking that year. And when we do it without the rhythm section vamp, without the rhythm section comping like that, and they play melodically, you can really hear that the trombones are struggling with fifth position there. But it's a very, very effective way of getting everybody listening. And these ideas kind of translate to us being able to springboard into getting improvisation happening. So let's take a look at what are some effective tools that you could use to teach your students how to get going with improvisation. Well, the one scale approach is really a good way to get started. And what I mean by that is you can teach everybody the scale. So in other words, if it's like the blues scale, if you want to use something that has the blues scale or a minor scale, a Dorian scale, if you can find something like I'm going to go show you this slide. I'm not going to do this tune. I'm going to use a blues, but you could do this is an easy one because it uses one chord on the A sections. It just uses a D minor 7 chord on the A sections and 2 different scales on the A section. I'm sorry, on the B section. So you could teach basically everybody just that D minor 7 chord, or just even the first few notes of this, and to get everybody to improvise. So if students are I'm going to go back a slide now. If students are overwhelmed with using all of the notes, you can compress this down, okay? And you can compress it down to just using the first 3 notes of the scale. You can use 1, 2, 3, 5, which is also a way of doing it. Some folks say that you should do 1, 3, 4, 5 on a Dorian. I think just for simplicity purposes for young musicians, I think doing 1, 2, 3, 5, no matter what the scale or the quality of the scale is, if it's major, minor, whatever, I think that's the best way of doing it, just to keep it simple for everybody. 1, 2, 3, 5. Then you can teach, of course, a pentatonic scale: 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. We can also do blues scales. You can also continue and show students how it's not just one octave, and that you kind of can branch out from that. So one of the resources I'm going to talk about here at the end is to get improvisation, to get some backing tracks for you to do. Of course, Jamie Abersold, who Alfred distributes his material, is the guru as far as creating play-alongs for different situations. And we have all of his basics improvisation methods in our catalog to distribute, and I'll actually have a resource there for you on that. But one of the things I wanted to kind of demonstrate what I'm going to talk about, what I've been talking about to you. So I'm going to play a blues here in just a minute, and I'm going to play on the first chorus. I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 on each chord. So we kind of have to use we have to use our ears a little bit. This blues has a couple more chord changes than what's on the screen right now, but you'll get the idea. So I'm going to play 1, 2, 3 on the first chorus, and I'm going to do I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 5 on the second chorus, just to show you how that works. On YouTube, there's a lot of different resources for backing tracks on YouTube. Some are good, and it goes from there. So I have found that this channel on YouTube, Learn Jazz Standards, has some very decent play-alongs. The rhythm section accompaniments are very well done. The rhythm section's tasteful playing. The tempos are appropriate. The voicings and the rhythm section are appropriate on the comping instruments. So it's very well done. And I think you'll see what I mean. I'm taking this. I took their F blues from this, and I'm going to play along with it. Like I told you, I'm going to demonstrate 1, 2, 3 on each chord for the first chorus, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 5 for the second chorus. This is a way of teaching your students. Okay, they need to hear the chord changes. Here's a way that you can have them hear the chord changes. Is getting them to identify when the scales change. So I'm going to do this. I slowed this cut down. You can do that on YouTube. I slowed it down to 0.85. It's just a little bright. And of course, you could have your whole band learn how to do this while you're playing a backing track. You don't necessarily have to have your rhythm section play along with you too. You might want all those students in the rhythm section have the drummers play along, but you might want to have your piano and bass and guitar students playing along with everybody else as well. So so you could use the backing tracks for that. So anyways, here I'm going to go ahead and I'll demonstrate what I'm talking about. This is a blues in F. So the first chord change is an F7. It's sort of like Bag's Groove, which was on the screen just a minute ago. Like I said, there's a couple more different chords in here. It goes to a 6th chord in the 8th bar, but you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate 1, 2, 3 on the first chorus, and then 1, 2, 3, 5 on the second chorus. You get the idea. That's of course I'm going kind of fast, but you could slow it down and make sure you got everybody with you. I did that for timing purposes here, but you get the idea. It's pretty straightforward, and it's a easy way to get everybody doing it. The other way of doing this is teaching everybody the scale for each chord, and have them go through and play the third note of each scale. and then have them play the seventh note of each scale, because those are the two most important notes in any chord in jazz. There's not a seventh, it's the sixth is the other important note, but it's usually the seventh. So we want to go through, and they're going to be moving around. You could also, since this is more oral right now than written, the third becomes the seventh, and some of the movement, and especially in a blues, you could introduce that as well. But I think beginner students, we want to get this happening first. So I think that's like the next step to me in that, just getting them to hear that the chord changes and what that most important note is in each chord. That works. So you could get a scale sheet and highlight those notes for the students, or have them highlight it and then have them follow along. Getting those ears developed and hearing that chord, the notes change, and hearing the third and the seventh in each scale is incredibly important, and the development of everybody's ears.
Mike, while you're jumping back to your screen share, we did have a question in the chat from Tim. He was from Tim. He was asking about those videos where you were demonstrating with your students.
Yes.
Do they ever see the patterns, or at this point is all of that ear training?
They did not see the patterns. So the rhythm section had actually, hold on a second. I'll show you. So if we go to my website here, and we go to the free resources thing. Are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So other free resources, here's the effective warm-ups. There's also color instrument parts as well. So this is what everybody's seeing. Here, let me just give you a part. So the call and response basically says trumpet, saxophones, vibraphones, listen and play back the phrase from your director. That's all that it says. So and for the director, it's all scripted out. So here's that information for you. Here's your call and response patterns. The swing are on one page, the Latin are on another. And I purposefully gave you the articulations, just in case you're not certain, and that's totally fine if you're not. So that's all scripted out. And then the other thing too is I didn't talk about the fourth thing that's in the effective warm-ups, and it's articulation exercises, and they're very similar to the call and response things that I scripted. And they're two measure patterns, and you can do these a variety of different ways. You can do it on a single pitch. You can have students. Excuse me. A dear friend of mine had his students demonstrate on they'd pick a chord, and he would have everybody play this on the first, the third, the fifth, the seventh, and the ninth of each chord, and then they'd move on to the next pattern. There's all kinds of different creative ways you can teach these articulation exercises. I just basically had the kids play it as a vamp at first, and then once we got all the way through the page, then I would do some creative things like using the chords, also putting different pitches with it, and developing some ear training. Have somebody play in the band, and then have the students play back whatever the pattern was that they did, and whichever pattern they did with whatever melodic alterations they did is what I meant to say. So there's all kinds of different possibilities with teaching that as well. But to answer your question, the students don't have anything in their parts. The rhythm section has a vamp. Winds don't have anything. Okay. All right. Very good question. All right. Let me go back to our presentation here. All right. So the other thing too is when you're introducing this, once your students get the hang of it, what I always found was like if I would give them, I would write scales out for them, and we would take the time and highlight the third and the seventh of each scale or whatever. When the students would get going, I would always find that they would stick to that scale in that octave, and they would not they didn't understand that you can go beyond that. It's okay. So that's something that, as your students get a little bit more comfortable with, you can do that. And you can say, okay, we're not, you don't necessarily need to play in one octave. You can go above or below. Okay. So you get the idea. So talking about some resources for you, we have this this is a great landing page on the Alfred website that our friend Ryan Fraley, a wonderful composer and arranger, who's part of our Alfred team, he created this landing page for us for it's a whole bunch of products that I'm going to continue referencing here as we go along, as well as some other things as well. So this is a great one. It's also in your resource sheet. Some of the great things that are in our catalog, again, are the Jamie Aebersold products we distribute. Okay, and if you're trying to do some theory, some beginning theory with your students, Shelley Berg's Essentials of Jazz Theory and our Alfred catalog is incredibly great. Okay, and it's definitely worth checking out. The Learn Jazz Standards playlist that I showed you earlier on YouTube is great. There are just a plethora of tunes there, and of course, there's the ability to slow things down. There's blues in every key. There's all kinds of great resources there, great tunes there. And again, it's done very tastefully, as you heard, because that's what I was playing along to. Brett, going back to talking about making connections for the students, Brett Primack is a jazz interviewer, and that's his thing, but he has a whole YouTube channel of various collections of performances by jazz greats that he has that he has kind of curated and put up on YouTube. This worth checking out, but of course, it goes without saying, we're dealing with colorful jazz musicians, so preview things before you play them for your students, but please make sure that you check it out. It's a really great resource for that. The Everyday YouTube channel, Everyday Jazz Everyday YouTube channel is also a great resource too. Not the depth of performances on Brett's YouTube channel, but some very interesting performances is there as well. Jamie Aebersold's handbook is something that we need to kind of talk about here for a second. If you don't know this resource, the link in am I sharing the right screen here? Yeah, there we go. This has got some really great stuff. If you're not certain where to go for who to listen to on any instruments, or to get your kids listening to the various players, he's got a whole page of suggested listening artists there at like a 6-point font. So he's got all the information crammed in there, right? So a lot of great information there. And then the next page is very killer too. It's suggested recordings, significant recordings of jazz history. Of course, there's more than this, but these are just off the top of some great recordings to play for your students off the top of your head. So that's another great resource for you to have as well. So the Jamie Aebersold handbook, it's a free download. You've got the link. That's great information. So here are some of my favorite go-to charts. Sorry, for the beginning of the year. And these are not necessarily all Alfred products. This is a MakeMusic and Alfred presentation together. And a lot of these, actually, if these titles I'm talking about, most of them are in MakeMusic Cloud. Not all of these are Alfred products. C-Jam Blues, the great easy Duke Ellington Blues. I think this one's in B flat to make it a little bit easier for young kids, maybe a little bit more user friendly. But it's a C-Jam Blues arranged by Rick Stitzel. Mike Story did a great arrangement of the Harry Sweets Edison tune Centerpiece, and it's just a blues that uses the same 4 bars over and over and over again. It's definitely worth checking out. And once you check out the arrangement, find the original recording, and then find Lambert Hendrickson Ross version, and make your kids learn the words. They'll have a great time with it. It's a lot of fun. Monkey See, Monkey Do by Rick Stitzel is just what it implies. It's a call and response tune. It's nice blues. Definitely worth doing. Mike Collins Dowden's tune entitled Avenue Swing in our Alfred catalog is it's a really cool blues chart, and the solo section, the soloing is only over the last 4 measures of the blues form. So you can open it up and feature students in a really narrow window, so that they don't have to necessarily even play over an entire 12-bar blues form. They can just play those 4 measures. Flat Tire Shuffle by Dean Sorensen's a flex title. Again, that's a very flexible solo section on that one. Paul Murtha's chart on Blue Train was a staple in my library. And it's just really well done and very easy to open up for additional soloists as well. Splanky by Neil Hefty. Roy Philippe's version that's in our Alfred catalog is the Count Basie version down a minor seventh. So it's not in the key of D flat, it's in the key of E flat, but everything's kind of down the octave, or down a seventh. And it's very, very playable and a lot of fun. And of course, it's a blues, so everybody, it's a lot of fun to do. Rick Stitzel's chart on blues and Haas flat is another one. It's a great one at the beginning of the year. And absolutely positively by Greg Yazanitsky, another great one. It's a mix of block and call and response, and it's just a very solid chart for students at the beginning of the year. And now I can't move on. Why can't I move on? There we go. Even eighth note charts at the beginning of the year. In our catalog, Listen Here by Eddie Harris, arranged by Victor Lopez, is great. It has, everybody has a guide solo. Everybody has the same guide solo. So you can have everybody learn it and then have them forget it and do your own thing with it. Or have them play snippets of it, or have them embellish what's on the page. You can have them, it's a great great resource and a lot of fun. It's just a two chord Latin jazz tune. It's a lot of fun. Funky Monkey by Rick Stitzel. Song for Silver by Peter Blair is the tune Song for My Father, Horace Silver's classic jazz composition, which basically uses 4 chords. It's an F minor. It's one of those beginning jazz improv tunes that everybody does. And this is a wonderful arrangement by Peter. And he's done a masterful job of that. John Barry's arrangement of Caravan and Mike Steinell's Bubbert series is great. It's correlated to Hal Leonard's Essential Element series. But that's a great chart as well as a call and response one. Some of my favorite go-to charts for the later half of the year. Burke's Works by Dizzy Gillespie, arranged by Stitzel. My Move, Your Groove, and the Alfred catalog, arranged by Terry White. It's a 16-bar blues, which is like a little bit elongated form. It's a great Hank Mobley tune. Hank was one of the great hard bop saxophonists in the 1950s and 60s, and it just translates really, really well to young jazz ensemble. So Terry White is another go-to in the Alfred catalog. Great writer, retired band director of Maine. He understands how to write for young jazz ensemble. If you see anything in in the Alfred red or green covered series by Terry, you cannot go wrong. And it's not just from an orchestration standpoint, but just solos, everything, the whole package. He's the real deal. And you can see the list. Five Spot After Dark is another favorite one of mine by Mike Story. It's a Benny Golson tune, and Mike has done a great job of making that minor blues tune playable by younger students. Even eighth note tunes, Tu Valor by Michelle Fernandez. This is a beautiful chart. It's now in MakeMusic Cloud. It's not one of our publications at Alfred, but it is a beautiful chart. Michelle has a way of writing for young musicians. She spent 31 or 32 years in the classroom in inner city Miami. She's a killer Latin percussionist and a killer writer. If you don't know her writing, you have homework. You need to go check her writing out. And you can see this list is there on the screen. You can check it out. All these writers are, and this is all in the clinic handout as well. Just great stuff. If you are someone that uses MakeMusic Cloud, I've created a playlist of charts that will support you in getting improvisation happening in your classroom and creating a chart, creating an experience where students are going to want to solo on these tunes. So this is the grade 0.5 to 1.51. This is also in the resource that's in the chat, I believe. And then this is the one that is another MakeMusic Cloud playlist that is a little bit more difficult stuff, 2 to almost grade 3. So hopefully these resources are going to help you as you go along. I'm just MikeKamuf@gmail.com if you ever have any questions and want to contact me and about this session or about charts or anything. I'm here to help. My website has that free resources page that I showed you on my website has various things on it, including a free string orchestra piece. So, feel free to check out my website as well. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.